Hello everyone! It is getting close to the beginning of university time, which is so exciting, and I hope if you're a fresher, you're excited to go. I just wanted to share with you this week kind of top tips for what to do with your bank accounts for uni, because this definitely took me a while to sort out, and looking back on the freshers vlog I made a few weeks ago, um, I, that was not the end of my bank account drama. It took me quite a while into freshers to actually have the system sorted. Like, obviously, I'm not a financial advisor or anything like that, but this might just be like a good starting place to begin to think about how you might want to organise your money at uni. What I do is I have three main bank accounts, which I think are kind of the base that you might want when you go to university. The first one is your main account, the second one is kind of an everyday account, and the third one will be a savings account. So I'll chat you through them and explain how they work. So my main account is a student bank account. Student bank accounts tend to have special offers that make them better for students. So quite a lot of them have overdrafts. I really wanted to try when I went to uni to not go into an overdraft, which is obviously a privilege, but so for me I wanted to choose instead one which gave me a bit of interest on the money I had in, just to try and tempt me to save a bit more rather than to tempt me to go into that free overdraft. This account is where all of the money comes in. So this is where your student finance comes into. This is where you want to make your salary come into if you have any jobs, any money you might be getting from your parents, if your parents are giving you money. You want it all to come into this account, and then from this account you want to send out your key expenses. So this is probably housing, especially if you're first year, that will probably be your main one, and maybe like a phone contract as well. Any other reoccurring monthly expenses that are essential. And then from this main account, you want to set up a direct debit. So I have a direct debit that goes into my everyday account, and my everyday account is the one I actually use. So a direct debit just means that it reoccurs weekly. Well, I've got it set up to reoccur weekly, and I transfer a set amount of money that I figured out from my student loan. So I figured out how much money I could spend a week on my student loan. I transfer basically a weekly budget into my everyday account. For your everyday account, I suggest using mobile banking. Monzo is a great one, which I use. This is where all of your everyday spending happens. So when you go out, when you go food shopping, I don't know, whatever else you might be spending money on at uni, it should all be coming out of this account. These accounts are really useful because they're super easy to see where you're spending money. They also allow you to set up budgets based on different things. So you could have a budget for eating out, a budget for eating in, and it will let you know when you're getting close to those budgets so that you can kind of visually see what you're spending money on. It's also easy to save because they have a category, quite a lot of them, called pennies. So basically it'll round up your spending for each thing. So say you spend like £3.52, that extra 48p would round up to £4, and that extra money would get put into a little savings pot for you. I think this is a really good way to kind of teach you to save money and help you to begin to save money, because it's a little bit that you don't necessarily notice at the time, but it adds up, and you see that actually at the end of the year you might have, say, like £100 to spend on something. They're also super easy to send money to your friends to. Some of the more traditional bank accounts, it can be a bit clumsy sending money, whereas I know Monzo is super easy to do it with. They're also really easy to freeze. So basically if you lose your card but you don't think you've actually lost it, you think you've just sort of misplaced it or left it somewhere, on the app you can literally freeze your card so no money can be spent on your card until you get it back, and then you can just unfreeze it on the app and continue to use it, which I think as a student is really helpful because cards get misplaced all the time. And also they're not that easy to go into an overdraft into. You can set up overdrafts on a lot of them if you want to, but mostly they're prepaid, so you have to transfer the money in before you're allowed to spend it, which is just a good habit to get into so you're not overspending at uni. The third account is a kind of separate account, which I'd say is less essential, but if you happen to have any extra money, any savings, say if you took a gap year and saved up some money that you've accumulated, you might want to have a cash ISA. There are many different forms of savings account. I just think a cash ISA is probably the best bet as like a safe starter. It means that you can get interest, so your money will grow in this without you having to do anything. And quite often cash ISAs are the easiest to access if you do have an emergency and you need to take that money out. ISAs are probably the most confusing out of all of these. There are kind of limits about how much money you can put in a year, but it's like 20 grand, so you're probably not going to get over it. and there are limits to how many you can open. But if you just chat to like a bank or whatever, they'll be able to help you sort that out and explain all of that stuff to you. I think this account is just really useful to have as a way to introduce you to the world of savings accounts and introduce you to saving money. You're probably not going to build up loads of money whilst you're at university, I doubt, because university is hella expensive. But it just lets you dip your toes into that world and makes you think about it and start learning about it without being too intimidating. Obviously, there is loads more to bank accounts and saving money and spending money than what I've mentioned here. This is just kind of a really simple introduction because it can be quite overwhelming when you start with, I think. It's a good ground base, I think, for slowly learning more about accounts. Like 3 accounts is a manageable amount, and learning to transfer money between those and learning to use different bank accounts for different things, I think, are really helpful tools that you can build up over university. If you're picking bank accounts, I would really highly ask you to think about the ethicalness of your banks and rating them. I made a video about ethical banking the other week, which kind of explains why it's important. And it's just much easier if you set it up initially with an ethical bank. You can change them, but I'd encourage you to think about it before you dive in, rather than afterwards, halfway through the year, like I did. I hope this was kind of useful if you're starting and you don't know what you're doing with bank accounts. It's a very confusing world out there, and money is scary and no one talks about it. So I'm just trying to help you be less afraid of it, because it doesn't have to be that bad, I promise.
Grind your heels into the sheets, grit your teeth and get some sleep.